The first time I heard about Power of Faith ministry, people said it wasn't just a church, it was an experience. They called it the Gen Z church. A place where makeup was holy, heels were sacred, and beauty was a form of worship. Every Sunday, girls in short skirts and shiny wigs marched like angels on parade. Their laughter floated through the dusty air of Agbada Town like perfume. The elders frowned, but the young women, they adored it. It wasn't the miracles that drew them there, it was the feeling. The freedom. The attention. And standing at the center of it all was Pastor Oliver. He wasn't an old man with gray hair and heavy robes. No, he was tall, clean-shaven, handsome, with a glowing smile that could make you forget your sins. His white suit sparkled in the sun, his shoes mirrored the clouds, and his cologne followed him like a halo. When he lifted the microphone, the crowd screamed as if he were a celebrity. I remember the first time I saw him. It felt like the air stopped moving. He said things that made you blush and laugh at the same time. He said, "Here, you worship with joy. No guilt. No fear. Look good, feel good, praise God good." The crowd clapped, the drums boomed, and women danced like the ground itself was holy. But I didn't go there for joy. I went because I was curious, and maybe, deep down, because I wanted to understand what power could make so many people forget what was right. That Sunday, I wore my white dress. Modest. Long. My head covered like my mother taught me. When I got to the gate, the ushers stared at me like I was a mistake. One girl laughed, "Sister, are you lost? This isn't your kind of church." I smiled. I came to worship. But the boy beside her pointed at a sign. No long gowns. No head ties. No flat shoes. When I tried to explain, he waved his hand dismissively. "We have rules here. Go home." And then he slammed the gate. Behind the iron bars, I saw them, women dressed like models, flashing gold bracelets and pink lips, snapping selfies under the church sign. The air smelled of perfume and pride. I turned away quietly, my heart heavy. But what I didn't know was that behind all that beauty, behind the flashing lights and perfect makeup, was something darker, something born years before, in another church, in another man's fall. Before he became Pastor Oliver, he was Brother Oliver, a quiet youth pastor at Holy Rock Chapel. Everyone loved him. He prayed longer than anyone else. He fasted until his lips cracked. They said his voice carried fire when he preached. He never smiled too much, never flirted. He said he was waiting for God's timing. He believed holiness was strength, and temptation was death. People called him the righteous one. And then she came, Rebecca. Rebecca was a storm dressed as a woman. Her skin glowed like polished wood. Her eyes could melt stone. When she laughed, it felt like the sun was rising. She joined the choir, and within a month, everyone was talking about her. But she didn't care about their gossip. She cared about him. She waited after rehearsals to bring him food. She asked for private prayers. She found excuses to sit close. "Pastor," she once said, her lips soft and deliberate, "how will you know your wife if you never let anyone close?" He smiled kindly. "When God speaks, I'll know." She laughed, low and slow. "Maybe you're not listening." But Oliver didn't laugh back. He looked straight into her eyes and said quietly, "Be careful, Sister Rebecca. The devil also speaks through play." That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. Her pride had been bruised. So she made a promise, if he wouldn't come willingly, she would pull him down. It happened one humid afternoon. Oliver was alone in his office, surrounded by open Bibles and scattered sermon notes. The choir was rehearsing in the distance. Then came a knock. Before he could answer, Rebecca stepped in. Her hair was loose, her perfume heavy. "Rebecca," he said, frowning. "Why are you here?" "I came to pray with you." He shook his head. "Go back to the choir." But she walked closer, slow and deliberate. "You pray for everyone," she whispered, "but who prays for you?" He stepped back, unease creeping into his chest. "This is not right." She smiled and reached out, her hand on his chest, soft, trembling. "Pastor, you've been avoiding me." "Stop this," he said, gently pushing her hand away. And then, before he could breathe, she kissed him. The shock froze him. The world seemed to spin. "Rebecca. What have you done?" Her eyes filled with sudden tears. She ran to the door, screaming loud enough for the choir outside to hear. "Pastor tried to touch me." Within minutes, chaos. People gathered outside the office. Phones out. Cameras recording. Her tears became evidence, her words became truth. By sunset, his reputation was gone. They didn't ask questions. They didn't pray for truth. They simply judged. Holy pastor turned beast. See how sin hides in white robes. The elders called a meeting that same evening. Oliver knelt before them, tears streaking his face. "Please," he begged. "It's not true." She lied. But Elder Bamadil slammed the table. "Enough. We saw her cry. You will leave this church before sunset." Rebecca sat in a corner, her head bowed, shoulders shaking, fake tears glistening in the lamplight. And for one brief second, Oliver saw it, a small, proud smile flickering across her lips. That was the moment he broke. He left that night, no words, no prayers, just silence. The same people who once called him holy now crossed the road when they saw him. He walked the streets alone, clutching his Bible like a corpse. Days turned into weeks. He stopped praying. He started drinking. Until one night, stumbling home under a dim moon, he saw a man standing on the road. Tall. Handsome. Wearing a spotless black suit. "Pastor Oliver," the man said, smiling faintly. "I've been waiting for you." Oliver frowned. "Who are you?" "A friend," the man replied softly. "A friend who knows what they did to you." Oliver's heart tightened. "You don't know me." "Oh, but I do," the stranger said. "You gave your life to serve God. And they crushed you. But your story doesn't have to end here." "What do you mean?" Oliver asked, his voice breaking. The man's eyes gleamed like wet coal. "Start again. Build your own church. Make it different. Make them remember your name." Oliver hesitated. "And what do you want in return?" The man smiled, slow and cruel. "Only one thing, only allow beauty. The women whose looks make angels turn. Their shine will be your power." Oliver stared, confused. "That sounds evil." The man's grin widened. "Evil," he said. "No, Pastor. It's justice." And that night, under the moonlight and the whispering wind, Pastor Oliver made a choice that would haunt every woman who ever stepped through the gates of Power of Faith ministry. I didn't know what possessed me to go back. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something darker. A week after they shut the gate in my face, I found myself standing again in front of Power of Faith ministry. The sun was sharp, and the music inside was louder than anything I'd ever heard in a church: drums, guitars, even whistles. I wasn't dressed in my usual way. This time, I wore what they wanted: a short, gold dress, red lipstick, high heels that hurt my toes, and perfume that clung to my skin like guilt. When I looked in the mirror before leaving home, I almost didn't recognize myself. When I arrived, the usher smiled this time. "Welcome, sister," one of them said, waving me in like I was royalty. Inside, it was breathtaking. The lights glowed pink and gold. The stage shimmered with sequins. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Pastor Oliver, the man who once preached holiness, now wrapped in a white suit so bright it hurt to look at him. His voice was smooth, deep, powerful. Beauty, he said into the microphone, is not a sin. It is a gift. The devil doesn't own beauty, God does. So shine. Shine brighter than your enemies. The crowd screamed. Women waved their hands, makeup brushes in the air like offerings. I should have felt disgusted. But I didn't. Something about his voice made my heart pound. He looked at us the way a king looks at his jewels, proud, hungry, satisfied. When the music stopped, he walked down the aisle, shaking hands, smiling at the women. When his eyes met mine, he paused for half a second. It felt like the air around me thickened. Then he smiled slowly, a smile too perfect, too rehearsed, and said, "Welcome, daughter." His hand lingered a little too long when he touched mine. And for a strange moment, I felt something cold travel down my spine, like invisible fingers tracing my soul. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice in my head, "Shine brighter than your enemies." It sounded like a spell. By the next Sunday, I was back again. And the next. I wasn't alone. More women came every week, young, beautiful, full of color. The town began to change. Tailors started making shorter dresses. Shops sold more makeup than Bibles. The women who used to go to other churches began drifting to Power of Faith. And the men followed. They said they came to hear the word, but everyone knew the truth. They came to see the women. It was no longer worship. It was a show. The older people in town whispered that Pastor Oliver had bewitched the youth. But no one could stop him. His fame grew. His followers multiplied. His name began to reach other towns. Soon, he started building a bigger auditorium, glass walls, golden chairs, screens everywhere. He called it the Temple of Radiance. I became part of the choir, not because I could sing, but because I was beautiful enough. The audition wasn't about voice, it was about looks. The woman in charge said, "If your presence doesn't catch attention, your voice doesn't matter." That was the moment I realized, beauty wasn't just welcome here. It was worshipped. Pastor Oliver's sermons grew stranger. He no longer quoted the Bible. He quoted himself. "Your body," he said once, "is the altar. Your reflection is your proof of glory. When you glow, demons flee." People clapped. Some cried. I just stared at him, wondering if he truly believed what he was saying. Then came the Sunday that changed everything for me. It was the first Sunday of the month, what they called Radiant Sunday. Everyone was required to wear red. The music was wild, the lights dimmed low. Halfway through the service, Pastor Oliver called a few women to the altar. I was one of them. He smiled, walking slowly toward us. "You are the chosen vessels," he said. "God will bless you more than others because of your beauty." He lifted a small bowl filled with shimmering oil. The scent was heavy, sweet, almost intoxicating. "This is the oil of attraction," he said. "When it touches your skin, your life will change." He anointed each woman's forehead, then, strangely, their necks, their shoulders. When he touched me, his fingers were cold. The oil burned. "Say it," he whispered close to my ear. "My beauty is my weapon." My lips trembled, but I repeated it. "My beauty is my weapon." The crowd roared. The drums exploded. But as I walked back to my seat, my chest began to feel heavy. My heart raced. My vision blurred. I tried to breathe, but it felt like something inside me had been opened or taken. That night, when I looked at myself in the mirror, my reflection flickered for a moment, like the light couldn't decide what it was seeing. My skin glowed strangely. My eyes seemed deeper, darker. I turned away quickly, fear rising in my throat. Weeks passed, and strange things began to happen. Some of the women from the choir started falling ill. Not sick like flu, no, something else. One complained that her dreams were filled with shadows whispering her name. Another said she saw a man in black standing beside her bed every night. And one girl, a bright, laughing one named Ada, simply vanished. They said she left town. But her family swore she didn't. Her room was untouched. Her shoes still by the door. When I asked Pastor Oliver about her, he smiled calmly and said, "She has gone to serve in the higher kingdom." I didn't understand what that meant, but the way he said it made my stomach twist. Then one Sunday, something happened that no one could ignore. During worship, a woman suddenly screamed. Loud. Painful. Her voice cut through the music like a knife. Everyone turned. She was on her knees, shaking, her eyes wide, pointing at Pastor Oliver. "You're not a man of God," she shouted. "You're a thief of souls." Gasps filled the room. The drums stopped. Pastor Oliver didn't flinch. He simply smiled. "Someone bring her out," he said softly. Two ushers rushed forward, grabbed the woman, and dragged her outside. Her screams echoed through the walls until they faded into silence. And then he turned back to us, his eyes calm. "Sometimes," he said, "the devil hides in the midst of worshippers. But he cannot touch this light." The crowd cheered again. But this time, I couldn't clap. My hands felt cold. Because for the first time since I'd entered that church, I realized I might be standing in a place where beauty wasn't just celebrated. It was being used. And I wasn't sure if I was still myself, or something else entirely. That night, I dreamed of mirrors. Hundreds of them, all around me. Each reflection showed my face, but they weren't the same. In one, my eyes were hollow. In another, my skin glowed gold like fire. And in one, my smile moved, even when I didn't. I woke up drenched in sweat. My room was dark, but I could hear something faint, like soft laughter echoing through the walls. It wasn't mine. When morning came, I told myself it was just stress. But deep down, I knew. Something inside Power of Faith ministry had followed me home. The next Sunday, I decided to confront Pastor Oliver. After service, I waited behind while others left. He was in his office, the same way I imagined him years ago when he was still that holy man people once respected. Now, he was different. The white suit was brighter, the gold rings heavier, his smile colder. When I entered, he looked up slowly. "Oh, daughter," he said. "You look even more radiant than last week." "Pastor," I began, trying to steady my voice. "Some of the women are sick. And Ada." He raised his hand sharply. "You worry too much. The enemy attacks those who shine. But do you think glory comes cheap?" His tone hardened. "Every blessing has a cost." I stared at him, confused. "A cost? What kind of cost?" He smiled again, that same perfect smile that never reached his eyes. "Don't think of it as losing," he said softly. "Think of it as exchange. The brighter you shine, the more heaven notices you." But something about the way he said heaven made my skin crawl. The next few weeks felt unreal. The women in the choir became thinner, quieter. Their laughter sounded forced. Their eyes seemed distant, like something was pulling them from the inside. I began to notice strange details around the church too. Every time Pastor Oliver preached, the lights above him flickered, but never went out. And behind the pulpit, hidden in the shadows, I could swear I saw someone else, a tall figure, always standing where the light didn't reach. Once, during rehearsal, I caught a glimpse of it again. Not fully, just a shape, a shadow that seemed to breathe. I blinked, and it was gone. That night, I told my friend Gozi, one of the choir girls who still had some life left in her voice. She whispered, "I see him too." "Who?" I asked. "The man in black," she said, her voice trembling. "He stands beside Pastor Oliver during prayers. Sometimes I think they speak without moving their mouths." I wanted to tell her she was imagining things. But I couldn't. Because I had seen it too. One Sunday evening, we had another anointing service. Pastor Oliver stood before us, holding a silver bowl filled with thick, dark oil. "This," he said, "is the oil of favor. It opens doors. It makes you unstoppable." One by one, the women lined up. When it was my turn, I hesitated. He smiled. "You doubt me?" I'm just afraid," I said quietly. He leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "Fear is the enemy of beauty. And the enemy of faith." He dipped his fingers in the oil and pressed them on my forehead. It burned, more than last time. The world spun. I heard whispers, thousands of voices murmuring at once. When I opened my eyes, the church looked different. The walls seemed alive, breathing, shifting with the beat of the drums. And behind Pastor Oliver, I saw the man in black again. Only this time, I saw his face. It was smooth, perfect, almost too perfect. His eyes were deep red, glowing faintly. And when he smiled, his teeth were too sharp to belong to a human. My heart froze. The oil on my forehead dripped down my face like blood. I stumbled backward. No one else reacted. The women were smiling, laughing, dancing as if everything was normal. I ran out of the church. Outside, the sky was dark though it wasn't yet evening. The air felt heavy. When I looked back, I saw shadows moving inside the windows, long, thin, stretching across the walls like black smoke. I didn't go back for 2 weeks. But they didn't forget me. On the 15th day, someone knocked on my door. It was late, past midnight. I froze. "Who is it?" I asked. No answer. Only silence. Then, a soft, familiar voice. "Open up, daughter. It's your pastor." My blood ran cold. I opened the door just slightly. Pastor Oliver stood there, smiling, dressed all in white, like a ghost. His eyes glimmered strangely under the moonlight. "Why didn't you come to service?" he asked calmly. "I needed time," I whispered. He took a step closer. "You don't abandon glory. Once you've been chosen, you belong to the altar." "Altar?" I asked, backing away. "What altar?" He smiled wider. "The one that feeds on radiance." Before I could move, he touched my shoulder. The same cold energy rushed through me. For a moment, the world went silent, completely silent. I couldn't even hear my heartbeat. Then, faintly, I heard a whisper that wasn't his. "You can't leave. You are light now." I screamed. When I opened my eyes, he was gone. The door was still open. The night air rushed in like a warning. The next morning, I packed my things and left town. I took a bus to my aunt's village, hours away. I told myself I would never step foot in that church again. But escape isn't that easy. Wherever I went, strange things followed. Lights flickered when I prayed. My reflection sometimes smiled when I didn't. Once, I found oil stains on my pillow, thick and dark, just like the one from the church. Then one evening, while fetching water, I heard laughter from the well, a man's laughter. Slow. Familiar. When I looked into the water, my face looked back. But behind it was another. Pastor Oliver's. He whispered through the rippling water, "You can run, but you can't hide your glow." I dropped the bucket and stumbled back, trembling. The next morning, I packed again, but where could I go? Everywhere I turned, I saw his shadow. Every mirror, every dream, every corner of the night whispered the same words. The brighter you shine, the darker the price. 1 month later, news reached me. Ada's body had been found near the riverbank, her skin pale, her eyes open but empty. The townspeople said she drowned. But I knew better. Because when they showed me the photo, I saw something on her wrist, a faint mark, like a burn in the shape of Pastor Oliver's ring. That was when I realized, whatever I had walked into was no church. It was an altar dressed in glitter. And I had already given it a part of my soul. For weeks, I tried to convince myself that everything would fade, the dreams, the whispers, the reflections that didn't obey me. But evil has patience. And Pastor Oliver's shadow followed like a curse. Everywhere I went, women disappeared. Not in crowds, one by one. Quietly. Always those who once sang in the Power of Faith choir. At first, the town said they left for mission work. Then, when bodies started turning up near the river, silence replaced excuses. The families cried, but the police had no answers. The bodies looked untouched. No wounds, no bruises. Just pale, drained, empty. And each of them, each one, had the same faint, circular mark on their wrist. The mark of the ring. One afternoon, my aunt came home trembling. "They reopened the church," she said. I turned sharply. "Reopened? After everything?" She nodded. "People say the new building glows at night. They call it the Temple of Radiance. They say miracles are happening there." Miracles. The word made my stomach twist. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that glowing building rising from the dust like a golden wound. And deep inside, something told me, this wouldn't stop until someone stopped him. I didn't know where the courage came from. Maybe fear has its own kind of faith. Before sunrise, I packed my bag, wrapped a scarf around my head, and took the first bus back to Agbada. The church stood at the edge of town, taller and grander than before. It was covered in white glass that shimmered under the sun like a diamond. But when the clouds moved, I noticed something strange, faint shapes behind the glass. Human shapes. Standing still. Watching. At the gate, 2 ushers smiled at me. I recognized one, a girl from the old choir. Her eyes looked dull, her smile too wide. "Welcome back, sister," she said. "How did you know I was coming?" I whispered. She tilted her head slightly. "The pastor said you would return. He's been waiting." The air around me felt heavy. Still, I walked in. Inside, the atmosphere was unreal. The lights were dim and golden. Candles burned on the stage instead of electric bulbs. Dozens of women knelt before the altar, humming softly, their bodies swaying in slow rhythm. Their faces were beautiful, too beautiful, like porcelain dolls painted to perfection. But their eyes were lifeless. Then I saw him. Pastor Oliver stood on the altar, wearing a long white robe that shimmered with silver threads. His hands were raised, his ring glowing faintly under the light. When he saw me, his smile widened. "Oh," he said, "the lost daughter returns." I froze. My throat felt dry. "What are you doing to these women?" He chuckled. I'm giving them what they asked for: power, beauty, purpose. They give a little light, and they shine forever. They're dying," I shouted. He took a slow step forward. "No one truly dies here. They become part of something greater. Can't you feel it? The radiance." As he spoke, the candles flickered, and the air shimmered. I saw them then, faint figures rising from the shadows behind him. Women, the ones who had disappeared. Their outlines glowed, their eyes hollow, their mouths open in silent song. I stumbled backward, shaking. "What have you done?" He smiled gently, almost kindly. "I built a new church. One the world could see and envy. One built on beauty, and powered by sacrifice." The figures behind him began to hum louder. The sound wasn't music, it was mourning. I covered my ears, but their voices seeped through my bones. I turned to run, but the doors slammed shut on their own. The women who had been kneeling now stood up in unison, turning toward me. Their faces were empty, their movements stiff. They began walking forward, slow, graceful, terrifying. Pastor Oliver's voice echoed through the hall. "You were chosen from the start," he said. "The night you wore gold and sang before the altar, your light was marked. You can't run from it." I pressed my back to the door, praying under my breath. "God, please. If you can hear me." He laughed. "You think God listens here? This is no longer his house." I looked up at the giant cross hanging above the altar, except now, I realized it wasn't a cross at all. It was a mirror. A giant, shining mirror. And in its reflection, I saw the truth. Behind Pastor Oliver stood not a man, but the figure from my dreams. The one in the black suit. His eyes glowed red. His smile was wide and cruel. He placed his hand on Oliver's shoulder, whispering something only he could hear. Oliver's face twisted in pain, then pleasure. The air cracked like thunder. The lights went out. When they came back on, Oliver was no longer alone. The man in black now stood beside him, fully, tall, sharp, impossible. "You wanted glory," the man said, his voice deep as the earth. "You wanted to be seen. Now they will never stop seeing you." Oliver fell to his knees. "I served you. I did everything you asked." The man's eyes glimmered. "Yes," he said. "And now your light has run out." He lifted his hand. The ring on Oliver's finger glowed, then shattered. A scream tore through the room, so loud it shook the walls. Oliver's body arched backward, light pouring out of his chest, golden, blinding, burning. The woman cried out, collapsing to the ground as the same light burst from their eyes and mouths. It wasn't holy light. It was hunger. The air smelled like metal and rain. I dropped to my knees, covering my face, whispering whatever prayer came to mind. Then, silence. When I looked up, the hall was empty. The candles had gone out. The glass walls were cracked, black smoke curling through them. Pastor Oliver lay motionless on the altar, his face peaceful, almost human again. The man in black was gone. Only the echo of his voice lingered. Beauty feeds the altar. Always. By morning, the church had burned to the ground. The people of Agbada said lightning struck it. Others said it was God's judgment. No one ever found Pastor Oliver's body. But sometimes, when the night is too quiet, when I look into a mirror for too long, I see him. Standing behind me. Smiling. And the oil mark on my forehead, the one he touched me with months ago, still glows faintly under the moonlight. I tell myself it's just my imagination. That the curse died with him. But deep down, I know, the altar still breathes. Somewhere, beneath the ashes of Power of Faith ministry, something waits. And it's hungry again.